The cold bit through my thin dress like teeth through flesh. I wrapped my arms around myself, feeling the slight swell of my belly beneath the worn fabric, a secret I'd kept for 3 weeks now. Terrified of what it would mean, the great hall buzzed with voices, laughter sharp as broken glass, and I stood at the edges where I always belonged, invisible, forgettable, the girl with pale blonde hair who cleaned the Alpha King's chambers and tried not to exist too loudly. Tonight was different, though. Tonight, the entire pack had gathered for the Harvest Moon celebration, and the air thrummed with an energy that made my skin prickle. Smoke from the massive fireplaces curled toward the vaulted ceiling, carrying the scent of roasted meat and pine. Beneath it all, I caught something else, the metallic tang of anticipation, of violence waiting to unfold. I shouldn't have come. But when the Alpha King's beta had announced that attendance was mandatory, I'd had no choice. So here I stood, pressed against the stone wall, watching the pack's elite celebrate their power, while servants like me faded into the shadows. Pathetic, isn't she? A voice hissed nearby. I didn't need to look to know it was Celeste, the Alpha King's chosen companion, a woman with sharp features and sharper ambitions. I don't know why Demon keeps her around. She's Omega trash. My fingers curled into fists, nails biting crescents into my palms. I'd learned long ago that fighting back only made things worse. Better to be silent, better to survive. But the child growing inside me changed everything. I'd felt it the moment of conception, a burst of light behind my eyes, a connection so profound it had stolen my breath. For 3 glorious seconds, I'd felt the mating bond snap into place, golden and unbreakable, tying me to the most powerful wolf in the Northern Territories. To Demon Ashford, the Alpha King himself. Then he'd rolled away from me, his eyes cold as winter rivers, and said, "This meant nothing. You understand that, don't you?" I'd nodded, because what else could I do? He was the king, and I was nobody. The bond had settled in my chest like a stone, heavy and aching, but I'd kept my mouth shut. I'd cleaned myself up, returned to my tiny room in the servants' quarters, and pretended my world hadn't just shattered and reformed around a man who looked at me like I was invisible. Now, 3 weeks later, I carried his child, and the secret felt like swallowing fire. "Attention!" The beta's voice cut through the celebration, and the hall fell silent. My heart hammered against my ribs as Demon rose from his throne at the far end of the room. Even from this distance, he was devastating. Tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell to his collar and eyes like storm clouds. Power radiated from him in waves that made lesser wolves drop their gazes. He'd never looked at me the way he looked at the crowd now, with purpose, with recognition. To him, I'd been a moment of weakness, nothing more. "Tonight we celebrate our strength," Demon began, his voice carrying effortlessly across the hall. "But strength means making difficult choices. It means cutting away weakness before it can poison us." Something in his tone made my blood run cold. I pressed harder against the wall, wishing I could melt into the stone itself. "There is a traitor among us," he continued, and the crowd erupted in whispers. "Someone who has betrayed the sanctity of this pack. Someone who dared to think they could deceive their king. No, 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 no." My breath came in short gasps as his eyes swept the room. When they landed on me, I saw nothing in them. No recognition of what we'd shared, however brief. No acknowledgement of the bond that still pulsed in my chest. One-sided and desperate. "Sarah Whitmore," he said, and my name on his lips felt like a death sentence. "Step forward." The crowd parted like a wound, creating a path between me and the throne. Every eye turned toward me, hungry for entertainment, for blood. My legs trembled as I took one step, then another, my hand instinctively moving to protect my stomach before I caught myself and let it fall. "You've been accused of theft," Demon said once I stood before him, so close I could smell cedar and smoke on his skin. "Of stealing from the royal quarters." "I didn't..." My voice cracked. "I would never..." "Silence." The word cracked like a whip, and I flinched. "Evidence was found in your room. A silver pendant belonging to the treasury. Do you deny it?" "Planted." Someone had planted it. I could see the truth in Celeste's satisfied smirk, in the way she stood just behind Demon's throne like she already owned it. "I didn't take anything," I whispered, hating how small I sounded. "Please, I'm pregnant." The word died on my tongue. If I told him now, here in front of everyone, what would he do? Acknowledge the child? Or find a way to make us both disappear? "The law is clear," Demon continued, his face a mask of indifference. "Theft from the royal house is punishable by banishment. You will be escorted to the border tonight and released into the barren lands." The barren lands, a stretch of wilderness so hostile that even the strongest wolves rarely survived more than a few days. In winter, with no supplies, no shelter, it was a death sentence dressed up as mercy. "Demon, please." The bond thrummed desperately in my chest, reaching for him, begging him to feel it. "There's something you need to know. I need to know nothing from you." His eyes were ice. "You are Omega filth who overstepped. Be grateful I'm giving you a chance to run rather than ending this here." The crowd laughed, and the sound scraped against my bones. I wanted to scream, to tell everyone that their precious Alpha King had bedded a servant and created a life, that his child grew inside me even as he condemned us both. But the words wouldn't come. Fear strangled them, along with something worse, the devastating realization that even if I told him, it wouldn't matter. He'd made his choice, and I was not it. "Take her," Demon ordered, and rough hands grabbed my arms. I didn't fight as they dragged me backward. My eyes locked on his face, searching for any crack in his composure. But there was nothing. He'd already forgotten me, turning to address the crowd about loyalty and strength while I was hauled toward the doors. The last thing I saw before they shoved me outside was Celeste's hand on his shoulder, her lips curved in victory. The journey to the border took 2 hours on foot, my escorts silent and brutal as they forced me through the darkening forest. Snow had begun to fall, soft flakes that would soon become a blizzard. By the time we reached the towering stones that marked the edge of pack territory, my dress was soaked through and my teeth chattered uncontrollably. "Good luck, Omega," one of the guards sneered, shoving me forward. I stumbled, catching myself on frozen ground that bit through my palms. When I looked back, they were already gone, melting into shadows between the trees. I was alone. The forest stretched endlessly in all directions, black trees skeletal against a darkening sky. Wind howled through the branches, and somewhere in the distance, something howled back, a sound too wild to be wolf, too hungry to be anything good. I pushed myself to my feet, wrapping my arms around my middle where new life fought to grow despite the cold trying to kill us both. "I'm sorry," I whispered to the child who would never know warmth, never know safety. "I'm so sorry." The wind answered with a gust so strong it nearly knocked me over. And then, impossibly, I felt warmth. It started at my sternum, spreading outward like sunlight breaking through clouds. Golden light pulsed beneath my skin, soft at first, then growing stronger. I gasped as power flooded my veins, ancient and otherworldly, and when I looked down at my hands, they glowed. A voice spoke inside my mind, feminine and vast as the night sky itself. "You have been wronged, daughter, but you are not forsaken." Who? I spun in a circle, searching for the source, but I was still alone in the frozen forest. "I am the moon goddess, and you carry a child blessed by my light. The one who cast you out will suffer for his cruelty. But first, you must survive. Run, daughter. Run south, and do not stop until you reach the Silver River. There you will find sanctuary." The warmth faded as quickly as it had come, leaving me shaking in the cold. But something had changed. When I took a step forward, my legs felt stronger. When I breathed, my lungs filled easier. And when I looked into the darkness, I was no longer afraid. I ran. I ran until my lungs screamed and my legs threatened to give out. But something kept me moving. That golden warmth buried deep in my chest, pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat. The forest blurred around me, dark trees becoming streaks of shadow as I pushed south, always south, following an instinct I didn't understand but trusted completely. The snow fell harder now, thick flakes that stuck to my eyelashes and made the world white and disorienting. My thin dress offered no protection, but my body seemed to generate its own heat, a gentle shield that kept hypothermia at bay. I should have been dead already. Instead, I felt almost strong, Almost. When dawn broke gray and cold over the horizon, I finally stopped, collapsing against a massive oak tree whose roots created a small hollow. I crawled inside, curling into myself, and let exhaustion drag me under. I woke to voices. Tracks lead this way. Fresh, maybe a few hours old. Could be a deer, or a wolf separated from its pack, or something worth hunting. My eyes snapped open, heart hammering. Through the tangle of roots, I could see 3 figures moving through the trees. Hunters, from the look of their heavy cloaks and the weapons strapped to their backs. Not from Demon's pack. Their scents were unfamiliar, carrying notes of river water and smoke. I held perfectly still, barely breathing as they circled closer. One of them, a woman with auburn hair braided back from a weathered face, crouched near my hiding spot, examining the disturbed snow. Whoever it was, they were running scared, she observed, her voice carrying a rough kindness that made my throat tight. And they're not dressed for this weather. Refugee from the Northern Territories? Asked another, a younger man with kind eyes. I heard Demon Ashford's been cleaning house, banishing anyone he considers weak. The name sent a spike of pain through my chest. I pressed my hand to my mouth, stifling the sob that wanted to escape. If that's true, we should help, the woman said firmly. Sterling Pack doesn't turn away those in need. Spread out. Check that. A low growl cut through the air, and all 3 hunters froze. I knew that sound. Had heard it in nightmares since childhood. The deep, rattling snarl of a feral wolf, one who'd lost their humanity to bloodlust and madness. Back to back! The woman commanded, drawing a long knife from her belt. The 2 men flanked her, weapons ready, as the growling grew closer. I could smell it now, the rot and decay that clung to ferals, the wrongness of a wolf who'd stayed shifted too long. It burst from the underbrush like a nightmare made flesh, massive and matted with filth, its eyes reflecting red in the pale morning light. Foam dripped from its jaws as it fixed on the hunters, muscles bunching for the attack. The woman was the closest. The feral would tear into her first. I didn't think. Didn't plan. I just moved. The golden warmth erupted from my core as I threw myself from my hiding place. And when I screamed, "No!" the word carried power that shook the trees. Light blazed from my skin, so bright the feral recoiled with a yelp of pain, shielding its eyes. The hunter stumbled backward, equally stunned. For a moment, I stood between them and the monster, glowing like a star, and I had no idea what I was doing or how to control it. The light flickered, dimming as my fear surged. The feral sensed the weakness and lunged. An arrow sprouted from its throat before it closed half the distance. The younger hunter had moved with impossible speed, knocking and firing in one fluid motion. The feral crashed to the ground, twitched once, and went still. The light faded from my skin, leaving me swaying on my feet. The world tilted sideways, and I would have fallen if the woman hadn't caught me, her strong arms surprisingly gentle. "Easy," she murmured. "We've got you. You're safe now." Safe. The word felt foreign, like something from another language I'd forgotten how to speak. I looked up at her through tears I didn't remember shedding and whispered, "Thank you." "What's your name?" she asked, helping me sit against the oak tree while the men secured the feral's body. "Sarah." My voice was barely audible. "Sarah Whitmore." "I'm Helena," she said, pulling off her cloak and wrapping it around my shoulders. The warmth was immediate and overwhelming. "This is my son James and my nephew Peter. We're from the Sterling Pack, about a day's journey south." Her eyes searched my face, taking in my pale hair matted with snow, my thin dress, my bare feet torn and bleeding. "What happened to you, Sarah?" The whole story tried to tumble out. Demon, the false accusation, the banishment, the child. But I couldn't make my mouth form the words. Instead, I heard myself say, "I was cast out, for something I didn't do." Helena's expression hardened. "Demon Ashford?" I nodded. "That bastard," James muttered, joining us. He was young, maybe 20, with his mother's auburn hair and a gentleness that seemed at odds with his warrior's build. "He's been terrorizing the smaller packs for years, taking territory and resources. acting like he's owed the world just because he's strong. Strength without mercy is just brutality, Helena said quietly, her hand moving to my forehead. You're burning up. How long have you been running? Since last night. The adrenaline was fading, leaving me hollow and shaking. The moon goddess told me to reach the Silver River. She said I'd find sanctuary. The three of them exchanged glances, and I saw something like awe flicker across their faces. The Silver River runs through our territory, Peter said softly. He was older than James, with gray threading his dark hair and scars marking his hands. And if the goddess herself guided you there, then Helena's right. You're under our protection now. Can you walk? Helena asked. When I tried to stand, my legs gave out immediately. She caught me again, sighing. James, she'll ride with you. We need to get her to the healers before... Before what? I managed. Helena's eyes dropped to where my hand rested protectively over my stomach. An understanding dawned in her expression. She'd seen that gesture before, knew what it meant. Before you and the child you're carrying freeze to death in this forest, she said simply. Come on. Sterling territory isn't far, and our alpha doesn't turn away those blessed by the goddess. They fashioned a carrier from branches in Helena's spare cloak, and James lifted me into it with care that made my chest ache. No one had touched me with kindness in so long. As we began the journey south, Peter and Helena flanking us while James carried me steady and sure, I felt something unfamiliar stirring in my heart. Hope. The Sterling Pack's territory was nothing like Demon's, where his lands were all sharp edges and cold grandeur. This place felt alive. We crossed the Silver River on a stone bridge worn smooth by centuries of use, and on the other side, the forest opened into a valley dotted with homes built from riverstone and timber. Smoke curled from chimneys, and I could hear children laughing somewhere in the distance. Welcome to Riverside, Helena said, smiling at my expression. It's not much, but it's home. It was everything. They brought me to the healer's cottage, a cozy building that smelled of herbs and wood smoke. An elderly woman named Miriam examined me with gentle efficiency, her hands glowing faintly with healing magic as she checked my injuries and confirmed what I already knew. You're about a month along, she said, covering me with a thick blanket. The child is strong, thank the goddess. But you need rest, proper food, and warmth. You're severely malnourished, and your feet are badly damaged from the cold. I don't have anything to pay you, I said, shame burning in my cheeks. I don't have anything at all. Miriam's expression softened. Helena already told me your story. You're packed now, dear. We take care of our own. She pressed a cup of warm tea into my hands. Drink this. It'll help with the shock and start healing some of the internal damage. The tea tasted of honey and mint, and warmth spread through my chest as I drank. For the first time in hours, maybe days, I let myself relax, sinking into the softness of the bed beneath me. The Alpha will want to meet you, Helena said from where she stood by the door. But that can wait until you're stronger. For now, rest. You're safe here, Sarah. I promise. As sleep pulled me under, I thought of Demon, cold and cruel in his throne room, casting me out without a second thought. Did he regret it? Did he wonder if I'd survived the night? Or had he already forgotten me completely, moving on to his next conquest while I died alone in the snow? The bond in my chest pulsed weakly, reaching across the distance between us, but it found nothing. No response, no recognition. He didn't feel it, didn't feel me. I was truly alone in this, bonded to a man who didn't know I existed and carrying a child he'd never claim. The pain of it threatened to drown me, but I forced it down, buried it deep. I'd survived his cruelty. I'd survived the forest. I'd survived this too. I had to. For the life growing inside me, I would find a way to be strong, even if strength meant learning to live with a broken bond and a shattered heart. I woke 3 days later to sunlight streaming through lace curtains and the smell of bread baking somewhere nearby. For a confused moment, I thought I was back in the servant quarters, expected to rise and begin my duties. Then memory crashed over me. Demon's cold eyes, the forest, the hunters, and I sat up too quickly, head spinning. "Easy there," a warm voice said. A young woman with copper-colored hair sat in a chair beside the bed, setting aside the book she'd been reading. "You're still recovering. I'm Rosalie, by the way. Helena asked me to sit with you. How long?" My throat felt raw, and she quickly poured water from a pitcher, helping me drink. 3 days. Miriam kept you under with sleeping drafts while your body healed. You were in rough shape, Sarah. Her brown eyes were kind but assessing, taking in my pale hair now clean and braided, the borrowed nightgown that actually fit. "How do you feel?" I took inventory. Feet still tender but no longer screaming with pain, body warm and fed, the constant terror that had lived in my chest since banishment now dulled to a manageable ache. "Better," I admitted, "much better." "Good, because Alpha Gideon wants to meet you, and he's not known for his patience." She smiled to soften the words. "Don't worry, though. He's fair. Gruff as hell, but fair." An hour later, I stood in the Alpha's hall, a far cry from Demon's imposing throne room. This space felt lived in, with maps covering the walls and a large wooden table dominating the center. Alpha Gideon sat at its head, a man in his 50s with silver threading his dark blonde hair and eyes that missed nothing. Helena stood beside him, along with James, Peter, and several others I didn't recognize, all of them watching me with varying degrees of curiosity. "Sarah Whitmore," Gideon said, his voice carrying the rough edge of authority earned rather than inherited. "Helena tells me you were banished by Demon Ashford on false charges, that the moon goddess herself guided you to our territory." "Yes, Alpha." I kept my eyes down, old habits of submission dying hard. "Look at me when I speak to you." I raised my gaze, finding not cruelty in his expression, but a weary kind of understanding. "Demon and I have history," Gideon continued. "None of it good. He thinks strength means domination, that an Alpha's job is to rule through fear. I've seen what he does to those he considers beneath him." His jaw tightened. "If you're running from him, you have sanctuary here for as long as you need it. But I need the full truth, what really happened." The room fell silent, waiting. I could feel the weight of their attention, the importance of this moment. If I lied, they'd know. If I told the truth, they'd know that too, and they might decide I was more trouble than I was worth. But Helena had promised I was pack now, and something in Gideon's eyes told me he meant what he said about fairness. So I told them everything. The words came haltingly at first. How I'd been a servant in Demon's household, invisible and insignificant. How one night, 3 months ago, he'd come to his chambers drunk and angry after a territorial dispute. How he'd looked at me like he actually saw me for the first time, and how that attention had terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. "He kissed me," I said quietly, my hands twisting in the fabric of my borrowed dress. And I kissed him back. I felt the bond snap into place, golden and absolute. And I thought... My voice broke. I thought it meant something, that the goddess had chosen us for each other. "But he didn't feel it," Helena said softly, understanding written across her face. "No. Or if he did, he ignored it. When it was over, he told me it meant nothing. That I should forget it happened." I forced myself to continue. 3 weeks later, I realized I was pregnant. I was terrified, didn't know what to do. And then Celeste, his chosen companion, had evidence planted in my room. A silver pendant from the treasury. She knew. Somehow she knew about that night, and she made sure I'd be removed. "And Demon?" Gideon's voice was hard. "He just let you be banished, carrying his child?" I tried to tell him. During the sentencing, I tried. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. He wouldn't listen. Said he needed to know nothing from Omega filth. Then he had me dragged to the barren lands and left to die. The room erupted in angry murmurs. James looked ready to shift and run north to rip Demon's throat out himself. Peter's scarred hands clenched into fists. Even Gideon's composed expression cracked, showing fury beneath. "That's not just cruel," Rosalie said, her voice shaking. That's evil. To condemn your own mate and child." "He doesn't know about the child," I interrupted. "And he doesn't feel the bond. I don't know why, but it's one-sided. Maybe because I'm Omega. Maybe because..." I swallowed hard. Maybe because I'm not worth the connection. That's not how mating bonds work, Helena said firmly. If you feel it, he should too. Unless, she exchanged a glance with Gideon, unless someone's interfering, dark magic can suppress a bond, make one party blind to it. Celeste, James growled. I'd bet my life she's got a witch in her pocket. Doesn't matter, Gideon said, standing. He crossed to where I stood and placed a hand on my shoulder, not dominating, but grounding. What matters is that you're here now, under my protection. Demon Ashford might be a king, but he has no authority in my territory. You and your child are pack, Sarah. We'll keep you safe. Something in my chest loosened, a tension I'd carried so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to be without it. Thank you, I whispered. I'll work, earn my keep. I can clean, cook, whatever you need. You're pregnant and recovering from trauma, Miriam said, entering the hall with a tray of tea. You'll rest, eat properly, and let your body heal. There'll be time for work later if you even want it. We take care of each other here, Rosalie added, linking her arm through mine. That's what pack means, not hierarchy and fear, but family. Family. The word settled around me like a warm cloak, unfamiliar but desperately wanted. The weeks that followed passed in a blur of healing and discovery. Miriam monitored my pregnancy closely, her healing magic ensuring the child grew strong despite the trauma of those first terrible days. My belly began to swell visibly, and with it came a fierce protectiveness that sometimes scared me with its intensity. Rosalie became my closest friend, teaching me about the pack's customs and introducing me to others. There was Marcus, the head of security, who treated me with the same respect he showed Gideon. There was Alara, a warrior with scars crossing her dark skin and a laugh that could shake the rafters. There was old Thomas, who ran the library and let me spend hours among the books, learning about pack law and history. But it was Helena who truly became my anchor. She'd lost her mate years ago, she told me one evening as we prepared dinner together in the communal kitchen. Understood what it meant to carry grief alongside hope. The bond doesn't fade, she said, chopping vegetables with practiced efficiency. Even when they're gone, you feel it. Like a phantom limb, something that should be there, that your body expects to be there. Does it get easier? I asked, kneading bread dough, my hands covered in flour. Yes and no. You learn to carry it differently. The pain becomes part of you, but it doesn't have to define you. She paused, meeting my eyes. Demon might have rejected you, but that doesn't make you less. You're strong, Sarah. Stronger than you know. I wanted to believe her. Some days I almost did. Then the dreams started. They came every night once I entered my second trimester, vivid and terrible. I'd see Demon pacing his chambers, rage radiating from him in waves. I'd watch as his kingdom slowly crumbled, attacked by neighboring packs who sensed weakness. I'd feel his confusion, his growing paranoia, the way everything he touched seemed to turn to ash. And I'd see Celeste, always in the background, whispering poison in his ear while shadows moved wrong around her fingers. They're prophetic, Miriam said when I finally told her. The goddess is showing you what's happening in the north. Your bond, even one-sided, creates a connection. And with the child, she placed a hand over my now prominent belly. Alpha blood strengthens everything. Why would she show me this? I demanded, frustrated and frightened. What am I supposed to do with it? Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. Miriam's ancient eyes were sad. The goddess works in mysterious ways, child. But she doesn't give visions without purpose. That night, the dream was worse. I saw Demon standing in his throne room, surrounded by the bodies of wolves who'd challenged his authority. Blood soaked the stone floors, and his eyes, those storm-gray eyes I'd once thought beautiful, were empty, haunted. Celeste stood beside him, her hand on his arm, and when she smiled, I saw darkness writhing beneath her skin like living smoke. The moon goddess has cursed you, she purred, her voice carrying an echo that didn't belong. For your cruelty, for your pride, everything you touch will turn to ruin. Your kingdom will fall, and you'll die alone and forgotten. I woke, gasping, my heart racing, hand pressed to my belly where the child kicked urgently. Outside, dawn was breaking over Riverside, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. In the north, Demon's kingdom was dying, and somehow, impossibly, I could feel his anguish through the bond. A distant echo of pain and confusion that made my own chest ache. He still didn't know about me, still didn't feel what I felt, but the goddess was making him pay nonetheless. 5 months had passed since I'd arrived at Riverside, and my body had transformed in ways that still startled me when I caught my reflection. My belly was round and full now, the child active and strong, kicking most vigorously at dawn and dusk. My pale blonde hair had grown longer, healthier, catching light like spun silver. But the most significant change was internal. I no longer flinched when people approached, no longer made myself small and invisible. The Sterling pack had given me something Demon never had, a sense of worth. "You're glowing," Rosalie observed one morning as we walked along the Silver River. Spring had come early, melting the last of the winter snow and coaxing wildflowers from the earth. "Pregnancy suits you," I laughed, one hand supporting my lower back. "I feel like a beached whale, a beautiful beached whale," she corrected, grinning. Then her expression grew more serious. "Have the dreams stopped?" "No." I watched the river flow past, its surface reflecting clouds scudding across a pale blue sky. "They're getting worse, actually, more vivid. Last night I swallowed hard, remembering. I saw Demon's beta dead, throat torn out, and Celeste standing over the body, wearing the beta's blood like perfume. Rosalie's hand found mine, squeezing gently. "Have you told Gideon? What would I say? That I'm having nightmares about a man who tried to kill me? That I think his kingdom is falling apart because the moon goddess is punishing him?" I shook my head. "He'd think I was losing my mind. Or he'd believe you," a deep voice said behind us. We turned to find Gideon himself approaching, Marcus at his side. The Alpha's expression was grave. "Because we've been receiving reports from the north. Demon's territory is in chaos." My heart stuttered. "What kind of chaos?" "3 of his allied packs have severed ties in the last month," Marcus explained, his scarred face troubled. "There have been multiple assassination attempts on Demon himself. His council is fracturing, fighting among themselves. And there are rumors." He hesitated, glancing at Gideon. "Tell her," the Alpha said quietly. "She deserves to know." "Rumors of a dark witch operating within his inner circle," Marcus continued. "Someone who's been manipulating events, sowing discord. Some say she's trying to seize power for herself. Others say she's working for someone else, weakening Demon so a rival can move in." Celeste. I knew it with absolute certainty. The same way I knew the sun would rise and the child in my belly would someday draw breath. "There's more," Gideon said, studying my face. 2 days ago, Demon sent emissaries to every pack within 3 territories. He's looking for someone. A young woman with pale blonde hair, last seen 5 months ago. The world tilted. "He's looking for me?" "We don't know if it's you specifically," Marcus said carefully. "The description is vague, but the timing. It's me." I pressed both hands to my belly, feeling the child shift restlessly. He's finally realized something's wrong. Or Celeste's magic is weakening, and he's starting to feel the bond. "What do you want to do?" Gideon asked. "If you want to stay hidden, we'll protect you. We'll tell his emissaries we've seen no one matching that description." I should have said yes immediately. Should have chosen safety, chosen to keep my child far from a father who'd condemned us both to death. But the dreams haunted me, visions of Demons slowly being destroyed by forces he didn't understand, manipulated by a woman who wore kindness like a mask, while darkness festered underneath. And despite everything, despite the pain and betrayal and months of suffering, the bond in my chest still pulsed with stubborn life, still reached for him across the distance, hoping for recognition that might never come. "I need to think," I said finally. "Can you give me time?" "Of course." Gideon's hand settled briefly on my shoulder. "But Sarah, whatever you decide, know that you have a home here. Nothing changes that." That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced my small cottage, a gift from the pack, my own space with a garden plot and room for a nursery, until exhaustion finally drove me to bed. But sleep brought the dreams again, more vivid than ever. I stood in Demon's throne room, but I wasn't really there, just a ghost, watching. He sat slumped in his chair, head in his hands, and even from across the room I could see how he'd changed. Thinner, with shadows under his eyes and tension in every line of his body. His dark hair had grown longer, unkempt, and his clothes hung differently, like he'd lost weight he couldn't afford to lose. "Tell me again," he said, his voice rough. "Tell me exactly what the seer said." An elderly woman stood before him, leaning heavily on a staff. I recognized her type, a true oracle, touched by the goddess with the gift of sight. The exact words were, "The one you cast away carries your salvation. Until you face what you've done and seek forgiveness, your kingdom will crumble like sand." Demon's hands clenched into fists. It makes no sense. I've cast away hundreds over the years, exiled the weak, the traitorous, He stopped, something shifting in his expression. "When did you say this curse began?" 5 months ago, my king. The night of the harvest moon. I watched him go still, watched recognition dawn in those gray eyes I'd once loved. His hand moved to his chest, pressing over his heart, and for the first time I saw him really feel it. The bond, faint and fractured, but undeniably there. "No," he whispered. "No, it can't be." "What is it, my love?" Celeste appeared from the shadows, all false concern and poisoned honey, but I could see the darkness now, writhing beneath her skin like living shadows. Whatever she was, witch or demon or something worse, she wasn't fully human anymore. Demon looked at her, and I saw doubt flicker across his face. "The servant girl, Sarah, the one accused of theft. When was she banished?" "That night, I believe." Celeste's smile was sharp. "Why? She was nothing. Omega trash who overstepped. You made the right choice removing her." "Did I?" His voice carried an edge I'd never heard before. "Or did someone help me make that choice? Plant that evidence? Whisper in my ear about loyalty and strength, Demon? You're not making sense." She reached for him, but he jerked away. "Don't touch me." He stood abruptly, pacing. "Something's wrong. Everything's been wrong since that night. I feel..." His hand pressed harder against his chest. "I feel like something's missing, like I'm missing. And it all started when the dream shattered as someone pounded on my door. I jolted awake, heart racing, the child kicking in protest at the sudden movement. Moonlight streamed through the windows. It was still deep night. "Sarah!" Helena's urgent voice called. "We need you at the hall. Now." I struggled into clothes, my pregnant body making haste difficult. By the time I reached the Alpha's hall, a crowd had gathered. Gideon stood at the center, facing 3 wolves I didn't recognize. Demon's emissaries, from the formal bearing, and Northern Territory markers on their cloaks. Only asking for cooperation. One was saying, "A woman with iron gray hair and a warrior's scars. Our Alpha seeks information about a young woman who may have passed through your territory. Pale blonde hair, early 20s, likely traveling alone and on foot. And if we'd seen such a woman," Gideon asked mildly. "What then?" "Our Alpha wishes to speak with her, to right a wrong." The emissary's expression was carefully neutral. He believes she may have been unjustly treated and seeks to make amends. "Amends?" Helena's voice dripped scorn. "Is that what we're calling attempted murder now?" The emissary's eyes widened slightly. "You know her. She's here." Before Gideon could respond, I stepped forward from where I'd been hidden in the crowd. The moment the emissaries saw me, saw my swollen belly and pale hair, and the way every wolf in the Sterling pack moved subtly to surround me protectively, their faces registered shock. "I am Sarah Whitmore," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "And yes, I'm here. Your Alpha banished me to the Barren Lands 5 months ago, while I was carrying his child. He called me Omega Filth and said he needed to know nothing from me." I lifted my chin, meeting the lead emissary's gaze. "So tell me, what could he possibly have to say now that would matter?" The woman swallowed hard, clearly not expecting this. "My lady, the Alpha has been... Things have changed. He realizes..." He realizes his kingdom is falling apart, I interrupted. That the moon goddess herself has cursed him for his cruelty, and now he thinks finding me will fix everything. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. But here's the truth. I don't exist to save him. This child, I placed both hands on my belly. This child deserves better than a father who tried to kill us both. The Alpha didn't know about the child, the emissary said desperately. If he had known, I tried to tell him. He wouldn't listen. The old pain rose up, sharp as broken glass. He chose not to hear me, chose to believe I was nothing. Silence fell over the hall. I could feel every eye on me, feel the weight of this moment. The emissaries waited, clearly hoping I'd agree to return with them, to solve all of Demon's problems with my presence. But I'd learned something in my months at Riverside. I'd learned that I was worth more than being someone's salvation, that my value didn't come from what I could do for a man who'd rejected me, but from who I was, strong, capable, blessed by the goddess herself. Tell your Alpha, I said clearly, that I am alive, that his child thrives, and that the curse upon him will only break when he faces what he's done, truly understands the weight of his cruelty, and makes amends not because his kingdom depends on it, but because it's right. The lead emissary bowed deeply. I will relay your words, my lady. But, may I ask, will you see him? If he comes himself, seeking forgiveness? I looked at Gideon, at Helena, at all the faces of the pack that had become my family. Then I looked down at my belly, where new life grew strong and sure. If he comes, I said softly, I'll listen. But forgiveness isn't guaranteed. And this child's safety comes before everything, even a mating bond. The emissaries left at dawn, and I watched them go from the window of my cottage, one hand pressed against the cool glass, the other resting on my belly where the child had finally settled into sleep. The morning was gray and heavy with the promise of rain, matching the turmoil in my chest. You did the right thing, Rosalie said from behind me. She'd stayed the night, refusing to leave me alone after the confrontation. Making him come to you, making him face what he did. Did I? I turned to face her, exhaustion pulling at my bones. Or did I just sentence his entire pack to suffering because I can't let go of my anger? Your anger is justified, she crossed to me, taking both my hands. Sarah, he left you to die. You don't owe him anything. Not forgiveness, not salvation. Nothing. If his kingdom falls, that's on him. I wanted to believe her, but the dreams showed me things that complicated my rage, showed me Demon as more than just the cold king who'd condemned me. In sleep, I saw glimpses of his past, a father who'd ruled through fear and taught his son that love was weakness, a mother who'd died when he was young. Decades of being told that an alpha must stand alone. I saw the loneliness that had shaped him, the armor he'd built around his heart. It didn't excuse what he'd done, but it helped me understand why. The goddess showed me his pain, I said quietly. In the dreams. I've seen him breaking under the weight of this curse. Seen him finally questioning everything he thought he knew. Part of me. I swallowed hard. Part of me wants him to suffer forever. But another part remembers that night, before everything went wrong. How he looked at me like I was real, like I mattered. And I wonder if that person is still in there somewhere, buried under all the cruelty and pride. And if he is, Rosalie asked gently, what then? I don't know. I pressed my palm against the window, watching rain begin to fall. I just know that this child deserves a chance to know their father, not the king, not the alpha, but the man. If that man even exists. 3 days later, he came. I felt him before I saw him, the bond in my chest suddenly blazing to life. So strong it stole my breath. I was in the garden, tending to the herbs Miriam had taught me to grow, when the sensation hit. My hands stilled in the soil, dirt crumbling between my fingers, as awareness flooded through me. He was here. On Sterling territory, close. Sarah. Gideon's voice carried across the garden. I looked up to find him approaching, his expression carefully neutral. We have a visitor at the border. He's requesting an audience with you. Demon. It wasn't a question. Yes. He came alone. No guards, no show of force. Marcus has him under watch. Gideon studied my face. You don't have to see him. We can send him away. But even as he said it, I was already standing, brushing dirt from my hands. The child kicked urgently, as if sensing my agitation, or perhaps sensing their father's proximity. Where is he? The meeting hall. I thought neutral ground would be better than... No, the word came out sharp. Not the hall. If we're going to do this, it needs to be private. Bring him to my cottage. Gideon's eyebrows rose. Are you sure? Having him know where you live, he's going to find out eventually. And I want to face him on my own territory, in my own space. I squared my shoulders, ignoring the way my hands trembled. Besides, I want him to see what I've built here, what I've become without him. 20 minutes later, I stood in my small sitting room, heart hammering against my ribs as footsteps approached the door. I'd changed into a simple blue dress that accommodated my pregnancy, left my hair loose around my shoulders. No armor, no pretense, just me. The knock came soft but firm. "Come in," I called, proud when my voice didn't shake. The door opened, and Demon stepped inside. The changes in him stole my breath. 5 months had carved hollows beneath his cheekbones, added lines around his eyes and mouth. His dark hair was longer, tied back carelessly, and his clothes, while still fine, lacked the meticulous care I remembered. But it was his eyes that truly shocked me. Those storm-gray eyes that had been so cold, so empty, now burned with something raw and desperate. He saw me, saw my swollen belly, and went absolutely still. The color drained from his face. "Sarah," he breathed, and my name on his lips carried a weight of emotion I'd never heard before. Pain, regret, wonder, fear, all tangled together. The child is yours," I finished, one hand moving protectively to my stomach. "Yes." He took a step forward, then stopped, clearly warring with himself. Can I come closer?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. He crossed the room slowly, like approaching a wounded animal, until he stood close enough that I could smell cedar and smoke on his skin. The same scent from that night, now mixed with exhaustion and something like desperation. "I didn't know," he said, his voice rough. "When I banished you, I didn't know you were carrying my child. If I had, I tried to tell you." The old anger flared. "I begged you to listen. You called me Omega filth and had me dragged away." He flinched like I'd struck him. I know what I did, what I said. And there's no excuse, no justification. His hands clenched into fists. I was everything my father taught me to be. Cruel, paranoid, seeing weakness everywhere and stomping it out before it could threaten my power. His eyes met mine, and I saw genuine anguish there. I was a monster, and you paid the price for it. We both did, I said quietly, gesturing to my belly. This child would have died in the barren lands if the moon goddess hadn't intervened. We both would have. I know. He swallowed hard. The oracle told me everything, how you ran through the night, how the goddess blessed you with strength to survive, how you made it to sterling territory more dead than alive. His voice broke. I condemned my own maiden child to death because I was too proud, too broken to feel the bond the goddess gave us. You feel it now? I asked, needing to know. Now I feel it. His hand moved to his chest, pressing over his heart. It's been growing stronger every day, especially the last few weeks. Like something that was blocked finally broke free. I can feel your emotions, your pain. His eyes searched mine desperately. I feel what you felt that night, when I rejected you, rejected us. The devastation, the fear, and I... He stopped, shoulders shaking. I can't undo it. Can't take back what I did. But Sarah, please, you have to know. If I could go back, if I could change it. But you can't, I interrupted. What's done is done. The question is, what happens now? He was quiet for a long moment, studying my face like he was memorizing it. Then slowly, he sank to his knees before me, the Alpha King, the most powerful wolf in the Northern Territories, kneeling in my small cottage like a supplicant. I came here to beg your forgiveness, he said, his voice thick. To ask for a chance to make this right, however long it takes. To be a father to our child, if you'll allow it. He stopped, struggling with the words. To try to become the man worthy of the mate the goddess gave me. Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not yet. And Celeste? His expression hardened. Under arrest. Once I started questioning things, really looking at the evidence, it all fell apart. The planted theft, the witness testimonies, all falsified. She'd been using dark magic to manipulate my emotions, suppress the mating bond, turn me against anyone she saw as a threat. He looked up at me, jaw tight. She wanted to be queen, thought if she could get rid of you, make me dependent on her, she could eventually bind me to her with magic. Is she... I hesitated. Is she still alive? For now. Imprisoned and blocked from her magic, but the council wants her executed for treason. He studied my reaction carefully. I wanted to ask you first, what happens to her? That should be your choice. She tried to kill you and our child. The thought of Celeste dying should have brought satisfaction. Instead, I felt only weariness. I don't want her death on my conscience, I said finally. Exile her. Strip her of rank and power and send her far away where she can't hurt anyone else. Let her live with what she's done. Something like respect flickered across Demon's face. Mercy. Even for someone who tried to destroy you. I've learned something here, I said, glancing around my small cottage. Strength isn't about domination or revenge. It's about choosing compassion even when anger would be easier. I met his eyes. The Sterling Pack taught me that, showed me what real leadership looks like. He nodded slowly, absorbing this. Then, still kneeling, he said, I don't expect you to forgive me. Don't expect you to come back to the Northern Territories or take your place as my queen. You've built a life here, found a family. I see that. His hand moved toward my belly, but stopped short of touching, waiting for permission. But please let me know this child. Let me try to be a father, even if I can never be your mate. The child kicked against my belly, as if responding to his nearness. I looked down at him, this broken, desperate man who'd tried to kill us and was now begging for scraps of our presence, and felt the bond pulse between us, still fractured, still damaged, but undeniably there. Stand up, I said quietly. He rose slowly, uncertainty written across his features. I took his hand, the first time I'd voluntarily touched him since that night, and placed it against my belly. His palm was warm, trembling slightly, and when the child kicked against it, his eyes went wide with wonder. That's your son, I said, watching his face. Miriam had confirmed it just last week. He's strong and healthy, despite everything. And yes, you can know him. You can be his father. I paused, gathering courage for what came next. But Demon, if you want to be part of our lives, truly part of them, then you need to change. Not just apologize, but actually become different, better. I will. The words came fast, desperate. Whatever it takes, however long. It's not just about me anymore, I continued. It's about him. I pressed my hand over his, over our child. He deserves a father who rules with justice, not fear, who sees people's worth instead of their weakness, who understands that true strength comes from protecting those who can't protect themselves. I know. His other hand came up, cupping my face with a gentleness that made my breath catch. I've been working on it. The curse, the goddess's punishment. It forced me to see what I'd become, how my father's teachings had poisoned everything I touched. I've been trying to change, trying to be better. But Sarah... His thumb brushed across my cheekbone, and I felt the bond flare between us, golden and yearning. I can't do it alone. I need you. To show me how. To help me become the man our son deserves. The tears finally fell, tracking hot down my cheeks. You hurt me. More than I thought it was possible to hurt. I know, you made me feel worthless, invisible. I know. His voice broke. And I will spend the rest of my life making up for it if you'll let me. I studied his face, searching for deception, for manipulation. But all I saw was genuine remorse, desperate hope, and the beginning of something that might eventually become love. I can't come back to the Northern Territories, I said finally. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I have a life here, people who care about me. I can't just abandon them. Then I'll come here. The words came without hesitation. As often as you'll allow. I'll split my time between territories, delegate more to my council, whatever it takes to be near you and our son. And the kingdom? Your people? Are important, but not more important than this. His hand pressed more firmly against my belly. Not more important than family. I've been learning to trust my council, to let others share the burden of leadership. It's made everything stronger. I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to believe. Gideon has offered me a permanent place here, I said, testing him. A cottage, a role in the pack. I'd have autonomy, respect, a real home. Good. No hesitation, no jealousy. You deserve that. Deserve people who see your worth, and you'd be okay with your mate, your queen, living in another alpha's territory. He smiled, sad and self-aware. I'd prefer you beside me, but I lost the right to demand that when I banished you. If this is where you feel safe, where you found happiness, then this is where you should be. He paused, then added quietly, and maybe, if I prove myself over time, you'll choose to come north, not because you have to, but because you want to. The hope in his voice, tentative and fragile, broke something in my chest. This was so different from the cold, arrogant king who'd condemned me. This man was raw, vulnerable, willing to humble himself for a chance at redemption. I need time, I said finally. Time to trust you again, to see if these changes are real or just temporary. Time for you to prove that you mean what you say. I'll give you all the time you need. He squeezed my hand gently. Months, years, whatever it takes. I'm not going anywhere. And when the baby comes, my voice wavered. In 2 months, when our son is born, I'll be here, if you want me. His eyes searched mine desperately. I want to be there, Sarah. Want to meet him, hold him. Want to... He stopped, swallowing hard. I want to be a real father, not like mine was. Better. Worthy of you both. I nodded slowly, feeling something in my chest begin to unknot. Okay, we'll try. But Demon, if you hurt us again, if you revert to who you were, you'll leave, and I'll deserve it. He finished. I know. I won't let you down again. I swear it. We stood there for a long moment, his hand on my belly, our child moving between us, the bond pulsing with tentative warmth. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was the beginning of something, a possibility, a chance. Stay for dinner, I said finally, stepping back. Meet the pack properly. Let them see that you're serious about changing. Relief flooded his features. I'd like that. That evening, the Sterling pack gathered in the communal hall, and I watched as Demon, proud, powerful Demon, humbled himself before them. He apologized for his past actions, acknowledged the pain he'd caused, and asked for the chance to prove he could be better. Gideon, Helena, even Marcus, they all watched him with cautious acceptance, willing to give him an opportunity but ready to destroy him if he threatened me or the child. And through it all, Demon never once pulled rank or showed arrogance. He was simply a man trying to earn back what he'd lost. 2 months later, on a warm summer evening, our son was born. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when I thought I wouldn't survive it. But Miriam's healing magic supported me. Rosalie held my hand and whispered encouragement. And when the final push came, when I felt my son slip free into the world, Demon was there. He cut the cord with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face as Miriam placed the tiny, squalling bundle in his arms for the first time. Our son had my pale blonde hair and Demon's gray eyes, and when he quieted at his father's touch, something in the room shifted. He's perfect, Demon whispered, looking between the baby and me with such naked love it made my chest ache. Sarah, he's perfect. You're perfect. His name is Rowan, I said, watching my mate cradle our child with reverent care. We'd chosen it together during one of Demon's many visits over the past months, a name meaning strength and protection. Rowan Ashford. Rowan, Demon repeated, pressing a kiss to our son's forehead. Then he looked at me, and in his eyes I saw everything he couldn't yet say. Love, devotion, eternal gratitude. Thank you for giving me this chance, for giving us this chance. Over the following months, we built something new, not the instant, passionate love of fairy tales, but something slower, deeper. Demon proved himself day after day, making the journey between territories to spend time with us, showing Rowan the kind of patient, gentle fathering he'd never received. He worked with Gideon to establish trade agreements between the packs, to create alliances based on mutual respect rather than dominance. And slowly, carefully, I let my walls come down. One evening, when Rowan was 6 months old and sleeping peacefully in his cradle, Demon and I sat together in my garden watching the sunset. His arm was around my shoulders, and I leaned into his warmth, feeling the bond between us pulse with contentment. "I love you," he said quietly. It wasn't the first time he'd said it, but it still made my heart skip. I know you might never feel the same way, but I need you to know, you and Rowan are everything to me. I turned to look at him, this man who'd come so far from the cold king who'd condemned me, who'd learned compassion and humility, who put our son's needs above his own pride, who'd earned back my trust one day at a time. "I love you too," I said, and watched wonder bloom across his face. Not the way I did that first night. That was infatuation, fantasy. This is real, built on truth and time and choosing each other every single day. He kissed me then, soft and reverent, and the bond between us blazed golden and whole, healed at last. "Come north with me," he whispered against my lips. "Not forever if you don't want, but come see what I've built, the changes I've made. Let our people know their queen." I thought of the northern territories, of the cold throne room where I'd been condemned. But I also thought of Demon's descriptions of the changes, the councils he'd formed to give voice to omegas and servants, the laws he'd rewritten to protect the vulnerable, the kingdom he was rebuilding based on justice rather than fear. A visit, I agreed, to see these changes for myself. But Demon, this will always be home too. Riverside, the Sterling Pack. They saved us when you couldn't, I know, and I'm grateful to them. He pressed his forehead to mine. We'll make it work. 2 homes, 2 families, whatever keeps you happy. As the sun set over Riverside, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, I held my mate close and listened to our son's peaceful breathing. The journey had been brutal, full of pain and betrayal and near death, but it had led us here, to this moment of perfect peace. The moon goddess had cursed Demon for his cruelty, had made him pay for what he'd done, but she'd also given us a path back to each other, a chance to build something better from the ashes of what had been destroyed. And as I sat in my garden with my family around me, I understood. Sometimes the greatest strength isn't in never falling, but in rising again, in choosing forgiveness over bitterness, hope over despair, love over fear. I'd been cast out and left to die, but I'd survived, transformed, become someone stronger, wiser, infinitely more precious than the invisible servant girl who'd once cleaned floors and prayed to be seen. And in the end, that was the truest revenge. Not destruction, but becoming so fully myself that the one who'd rejected me had to spend a lifetime earning the right to stand beside me. "Thank you," I whispered to the goddess, to the universe, to whatever force had guided me through the darkness to this light. The wind carried my gratitude away like a prayer, and somewhere in the distance I could have sworn I heard her answer, "You're welcome, daughter. You were always meant for this."